This is Matthew Kratter's Bitcoin University. Today I want to answer the question, is Kaspa the next Bitcoin? In this video, I'm going to give you the methodology you can use not just to analyze Kaspa, but to analyze any new cryptocurrency that you might have questions about. So I'd encourage you to watch this video, even if you're not especially interested in Kaspa. Now, Kaspa is currently ranked number 24 among cryptocurrencies by market cap. It's currently sandwiched between ICP, Internet Computer, and Pepe, but I think Kaspa is a much more serious project than either of these scammy projects. What is Kaspa? Kaspa, according to their own website, is a cryptocurrency that implements a protocol called Ghostag. This is a generalization of Nakamoto consensus, and according to this website, unlike blockchains, a blockdag orders all blocks in parallel within consensus, which permits for extremely high block rates, virtually instant transactions, and scalability at no cost to security. This is based on a paper by the founder of Kaspa named Yonatan and a couple other names here which will come up later in this video. So I'll link to this if you want to read about it. And I would say that Ghostag does appear to me to be a real innovation in this space. One of the talking points for Kaspa always is that it solves the trilemma faced by traditional cryptocurrencies. This is the blockchain trilemma, which I think Vitalik Buterin was actually the first to write about this. But this is the idea that there are various trade-offs, and if you want security or scalability or decentralization, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You're going to have to give up on one of those. Has Kaspa actually solved this trilemma? From my cursory reading of their literature, it looks to me that the end state of Kaspa, if it were to be globally successful, is just a few people or very few people running massive archival nodes, thus threatening decentralization. But for the purposes of this video, I want to be really fair. I'm going to take the Kaspa community at their word and assume that Kaspa's Ghostag is as amazing as they say it is, and that it has indeed solved the blockchain trilemma, which is very exciting if true. Now, good things about Kaspa that distinguishes it from your common shitcoin, your common VC issued shitcoin with its premine, etc. Kaspa does not have a premine or any initial token allocation to anyone. Unlike Ethereum and Cardano and other trashy protocols, Kaspa runs on proof of work, which is really nice to see. And Kaspa also has a fixed maximum supply, just like Bitcoin. Though one might question whether its forward monetary policy, its future max supply, is as credible as Bitcoin's. Does the Kaspa community take this hard cap extremely seriously? Or could they be persuaded by Kaspa devs to increase the supply, the maximum supply at some point, if there's not enough revenue coming in from transaction fees? I do know that Bitcoiners are insane fanatics about not increasing the max supply and have been for 15 years. Kaspa has been around for only about 3 years, so it may be too early to tell. Though incentives would suggest that Kaspa holders would not want to dilute themselves and their own holdings by increasing the supply. If you're finding this video interesting so far, I just ask you to help to support the channel. Click that subscribe button and become a subscriber if you haven't already. Leave a like, leave a comment, question, suggestion for a future video. I think this video is going to prove to be extremely controversial, so you can leave a comment about that. Though please do be respectful to all sides involved, and also share this video with a friend or a family member. So Kaspa's max supply is 28.7 billion coins, and this is one reason it looks so cheap, because there's so many coins, whereas Bitcoin's max supply is just 21 million, and so Bitcoin ends up on a per unit basis looking more expensive. Now, some bad things about Kaspa we're going to turn to now. One bad thing about Kaspa is that it has a living founder who tweets. This is Yonatan Sopolinsky. I just decided to check out his Twitter, and the first thing I see at the top is this: vengeance is justice. The only verdict is vengeance, a vendetta held as a votive not in vain. And then there's a link to a YouTube video. This is actually a pretty funny quote. It's from one of my favorite movies, which is V for Vendetta, which I encourage everyone to see if they haven't seen it already. If we take a look at the date of this tweet, it's October 7th, 2023, which happens to be the same date that Israel invaded the Gaza Strip. And then Yonatan links to a YouTube video as part of this tweet. And though I enjoyed the V for Vendetta film, this is going to be a little more controversial. This is Ayn Rand on Israel and the Middle East, and this is what she says at the beginning of the video.
But if you mean whose side should one be on, Israel or the Arabs, I would certainly say Israel, because
So this is what's really behind this tweet. It is a V for Vendetta quote, but it's obviously talking about current events. And if I were a Palestinian or a Muslim from any country, and I'm actually not either of these things, is this really what I would want to see if I were a Palestinian, Muslim, or a Muslim from any country? Is this really what I want to see tweeted out by the founder of the world's supposed next global reserve currency? The whole Kaspa dev team appears to be mostly Israelis as well. If we take a look at Kaspa.org, we have Yonatan at the top here, and then all these guys appear to be either Israelis or have studied at some point at Hebrew University in Jerusalem. Now, decentralization is important at many different levels when it comes to cryptocurrencies, and having the living founder and devs who are mostly Israelis is not exactly what you want to see when it comes to decentralization, especially when they're constantly tweeting about Gaza. You have to ask yourself, is Kaspa anti-Muslim money? I think it's a good question. I cannot definitively say that it is not, unfortunately. Obviously, the math, Ghostag, the cryptography is neutral, and the network is neutral, at least at this point. But the problem is that the founder and devs who determined Kaspa's roadmap have taken to having a very public stance on the Israel-Palestine conflict. And in fairness to them, if I lived in the area, this is something I would be obsessed with as well, because the conflict would be very close to my doorstep. The problem, though, is when you have a founder and devs who determine the Kaspa's roadmap, and they've taken this very public stance, they also have an outsized influence on the community, which still puts a lot of trust in them. You'll see this a lot in tweets. People talking about the Kaspa devs. This is Entropia saying, I've heard devs say that they will not, and miners will be paid by smart contract fees. My faith is in Yonatan's resume. And this is what you come back to again and again. Some people even claim that Yonatan is Satoshi Nakamoto, which he clearly is not. But let's leave aside your own political or religious views on the Israel-Palestine tragedy for a moment. Even assuming that Yonatan and his devs have zero influence over future Kaspa forks, which it would be naive to assume since Yonatan has a bully pulpit that he could choose to start using at any time, even assuming that they have zero influence over future Kaspa forks, this is a problem because this is something that could always happen. He could, or the devs could, use their bully pulpits for this. This is one big problem with having a living founder. If Satoshi, in fairness, if Satoshi were alive on social media today, it would probably be a similar disaster. Satoshi had the foresight and the humility to leave the project and never be heard from again, and unfortunately Yonatan did not. This is one key difference between Bitcoin's immaculate conception versus Kaspa, which is trying to make a baby in front of everyone in public. And the really sad thing here is that Yonatan himself understands this principle, but has been unable to follow in Satoshi's superhuman path. Here's a tweet from Yonatan quoting, I guess, Fish Tuna, and Yonatan saying the operation was successful, but the doctor died, nailed it. If the patient is a money system, the doctor must vanish as Satoshi vanished. Because money is a medium rather than a product, it must emerge rather than be purposed. This is one problem with having a living and active founder with politics. In the case of Bitcoin, the doctor, which was Satoshi, the doctor definitely vanished. In the case of Kaspa, the doctor is unfortunately still around and tweeting pro-Israel videos. And I want to be really, really, really clear here about the point that I'm making, because I know that my enemies will try to use this against me to try to get me deplatformed for supposed anti-Semitism. So I'll say this very, very clearly here. This is not about being for or against Israelis or Palestinians or Jews or Muslims or even Christians. It's important to remember that 3% of the Palestinians are indeed Christians. This is about, the point I'm making here, it's about the necessary preconditions for creating neutral money that can be embraced and used by 8 billion human beings from every country, every state, every territory in the world, including people who are Christians, Jews, Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, deists, atheists, agnostics, whatever. And if your core dev team is all Israelis, that's great if you're just writing software, but it's not so great if you're trying to create new neutral money for the world. And it's even worse if your founder is actively tweeting and linking to pro-Israel videos. All I can say here is thank God that Satoshi disappeared when he did and never came back, whether it was something he chose to do or whether it was by accident. This was a great, great blessing. And thank God that he disappeared, because I personally do not like sashimi. In the case of Bitcoin, the doctor definitely vanished, but it's much, much more than that. And I want to expand on what Yonatan was saying there. It's much, much more than the doctor just disappearing. Bitcoin really was nothing more than a curiosity in its early years. It was a collectible for nerds that had zero monetary value. Then something amazing happened. Bitcoin grew slowly and organically under the radar. Bitcoin experienced a long and slow and organic distribution of coins, and then Bitcoin experienced spontaneous monetization. It started off having no monetary value. Bitcoin didn't have a Harvard or Hebrew University PhD doing Medium posts and telling everyone that he made Kaspa to get rich. This is a Medium post by Yonatan where he talks about why he made Kaspa, and the second reason was to make myself rich, which I think is a little bit embarrassing to say, especially when you compare it to Satoshi's humility and the fact that Satoshi has never moved his coins. Now, what a lot of people fail to understand, and I think the Kaspa community fails to understand this as well, is that creating a new money involves multiple factors beyond cool new tech or cool new cryptography or cool new math. Ghost Egg certainly appears to me at least to be a genuine innovation. And maybe there are aspects of it that could work well within the Bitcoin ecosystem, maybe as part of a layer 2, but then you wouldn't need the Kaspa token at all. Creating a new money involves much more than cool new tech or cryptography. It involves a fair community launch without a premine. That's table stakes. And I think Kaspa does that well, unlike almost every other crypto in the world besides Bitcoin. But you also need a slow, organic process of growth in which the coins are globally distributed and spontaneously monetized. And Kaspa rushes this, unfortunately, because its founder and its devs are only human and they're high time preference like the rest of us. So Kaspa launched, it was in November of 2021, and 95% of all the coins will have been mined by July 2026. So this is a much faster issuance schedule than Bitcoin had. Here's the thing, you can only create true digital scarcity once, and Satoshi did just that with Bitcoin. Any subsequent attempts to do this, any subsequent creations will always be copies, near copies, copycats, derivatives, variations that go around telling everyone online and on Twitter that they're better than Bitcoin for whatever reason. Bitcoin is always the standard for some reason that everyone compares everything to. Now, if Satoshi had known about block tag at the time, maybe he would have used it as the basis for Bitcoin, but he didn't know about it and he did not use it as the basis for Bitcoin. And by the time that Kaspa came on the scene in late 2021, Bitcoin was already a globally distributed asset with powerful network effects and a market cap above 1 trillion. That is a powerful first mover advantage that I don't believe that Kaspa can overcome. Bitcoin already has a global brand and Kaspa does not. Bitcoin is already being plugged into the financial system everywhere from savings, retirement accounts, corporate treasuries, ETFs, futures, options, etc. Bitcoin has so many companies in the ecosystem that make hardware wallets. It has exchanges. It has retirement products. It has everything you could imagine. And by contrast, Kaspa is a very, very new, very niche product. It's only been around since 2021. Kaspa is also not battle tested like Bitcoin. Kaspa hasn't even grown large enough yet to warrant attention from nation state attackers like Bitcoin has. Will Kaspa be able to survive when it's attacked? Maybe it will, maybe it won't. The question is, do you feel lucky? I certainly wouldn't sleep well if I stored my savings in Kaspa rather than Bitcoin. Now, the Kaspa community seems always quick to offer olive branches to Bitcoiners, and this is a gesture that I do appreciate and assure us that they're not here trying to usurp Bitcoin's place with their new coin. Common phrases you'll see in my discussion with them and with other people: I don't see Kaspa as a competitor to Bitcoin. They'll also say that Kaspa is silver to Bitcoin's gold, and I would say that the latter phrase is especially unfortunate. Kaspa is called Kaspa because Kaspa means silver in Aramaic, and so technically Kaspa is being marketed as silver to Bitcoin's gold based on its very name. Unfortunately, that's the same silly marketing slogan that Litecoin has been trying to use for years. And this is what silver to Bitcoin's gold has looked like for Litecoin, so I'm not sure why you'd want to take this similar tack and label Kaspa as silver, because Litecoin shows you that silver to gold doesn't do very well when it comes up to crypto. And since gold itself, physical gold, historically ended up demonetizing silver, this metaphor also shows ignorance of economic history. The only reason people use physical silver on a bimetallic standard was because gold is very dense and very expensive and difficult to subdivide, so silver functioned as quote-unquote small change to gold's larger denominations. It's obviously not a problem for software money like Bitcoin or cryptocurrency in general, where you can subdivide Bitcoin into sats and then those sats into smaller denominations if necessary. And saying that this is going to be a problem implies a massive valuation for Bitcoin, because dollar sat parity is the same thing as saying that one Bitcoin is valued at $100 million. So this is not a problem. This divisibility and scalability is not a problem for next week. So you don't really need silver to Bitcoin's gold, because Bitcoin itself is divisible. Then you'll see comments like this from Dominic Oliver. Well, I don't see it as a competitor to Bitcoin. It can never get so valuable as Bitcoin, as it has a much larger max supply. Kaspa is more like a coin that could be used for payments in the future instead of fiat money. They say it is fast and a big number of transactions per second. Bitcoin, on the other hand, is more like digital gold or diamond, as it is high value and scarce. You wouldn't want to use it for payments in restaurants, shops, etc. I always love to hear your honest opinion, so please tell me if I'm very wrong here. And I think he is wrong. I think it's a big mistake to assume that there can be two different kinds of money, and one's going to be used for store value and another's going to be used for medium of exchange. These two functions of money are inextricably tied together, and thus will converge to using one money only. And you can certainly use Bitcoin over Lightning for payments, for smaller payments in restaurants and shops, etc. As for this peaceful coexistence between different forms of money, people saying within the Kaspa community or the Bitcoin community or any other community saying, I don't really see XYZ or Kaspa as a competitor to Bitcoin, this is an absurd statement to make. All money competes with all other money. Money is war. That's what it is. It's not cooperation. Strong money vanquishes weak money, as has been happening with the US dollar, wiping out the Turkish lira, wiping out the Lebanese pound, and lately even wiping out the Japanese yen. Do you happen to carry US dollars and euros and yen in your wallet, in your bank accounts? Unless you're a multinational corporation, you probably don't, because of course it's quite inconvenient. And this is why money is a winner-take-all game. Money is the most saleable commodity, the most saleable asset. And so it would make sense that you would want something that is accepted everywhere. You don't want multiple forms of money. This is why money always tries to converge to one. Even today, the world is still mostly on a US dollar standard. Almost all the central banks hold US dollar denominated US treasuries as a reserve asset. And most money in the world today is pegged either informally or formally to the US dollar, and is thus subject to Federal Reserve monetary policy. When the Fed sneezes, the whole world catches cold, and the Fed's knock-on cross-currency effects. So money converges to one. We'd actually already have one global money if it weren't for nation states putting up gates and sanctions, which is admittedly a logical response to other governments issuing their own competing fiat monies. But for Bitcoin is much more difficult for nation states to try to stop with gates and sanctions. And there's also this nation state accumulation game theory behind it, since no country can turn it off or freeze it, which makes it a very nice thing to accumulate, even if your enemies don't like you accumulating it. So the US can accumulate it, and China and Russia can do nothing about it, and vice versa, which is quite different for fiat currencies. If Russia starts to accumulate US dollars, the Fed or the US Treasury can turn it off, unlike Bitcoin. So the fact that it's much more difficult for nation states to stop Bitcoin, and the fact that there's going to be this competition for it, and the fact that it's neutral money that can't be turned off by your enemies, all of this suggests that Bitcoin possesses all of the necessary properties that it needs to become the world's next global reserve currency and global reserve asset, being used as a store of value, as a medium of exchange, and as a unit of account. So if you're saying that Kaspa is not a competitor to Bitcoin, we just want to peacefully coexist with you guys, then you don't understand anything about economic history or about how monetary competition works. Issuers of fiat put a gun, itself funded by the fiat money printers, to our heads and force us to use their money. And that's why there's still different forms of money in the world, and not just one, though there's really only one global monetary reserve asset, which used to be gold and now is US Treasuries, and some people are diversifying back into gold. Some will diversify into Bitcoin. But fiat puts a gun to your head and forces you to use it. Unless Kaspa is going to put a gun to your head, to our heads as well, then it's just going to have to compete in the free market against Bitcoin, just like fiat, just like other cryptocurrencies. And I personally have no doubt that Kaspa will lose this competition thanks to its late arrival on the scene at a time when Bitcoin was already a $1 trillion asset with global network effects. This is the pool, this is the ocean that Bitcoin is playing in right now. It's playing here with Saudi Aramco, the biggest oil company in the world. Is playing here with big tech. It's playing here with silver and gold. It's one of the top 10 assets in the world, and it's extremely liquid and accessible as well. Whereas Kaspa is still playing in the shallow end, or a little blow-up swimming pool, has a market cap less than $5 billion currently, even though it's gone up a lot this year. It's still absolutely tiny. It's playing a completely different game. It's not on the global stage yet like Bitcoin is. Then the question arises, couldn't Bitcoin eventually be defeated by Kaspa, just like Bitcoin has been defeating fiat for the past 15 years? I think the answer to this is no as well. It's a very different kind of competition because Bitcoin is scarce, sound money, whereas what it's fighting against, fiat money, is absolute garbage, and it's not scarce at all. So it's very easy for scarce, sound money to defeat garbage. Kaspa has a much bigger fight on its hands than this. Kaspa will have to try to defeat a battle-hardened warrior that has a 12-year lead over Kaspa, and that battle-hardened warrior is the best money that the world has ever seen. So I just say good luck with that. The Kaspa army is still small and very niche. The Bitcoin army is large and global. Bitcoin is front and center in the US presidential race. Bitcoin is front and center on Wall Street today. Bitcoin is front and center in geopolitics today. Bitcoin is a $1 trillion asset waging war on the global stage, while Kaspa is still just a little boy sitting at home, playing with his toy soldiers and pretending that one day he will grow up to be Napoleon, and he's pretending he's going to know what he's going to do in the heat of battle when he's being shot at and he's covered with blood. Bitcoin is already in the heat of that battle, whereas Kaspa is not even started that battle. Kaspa is still just a little boy sitting at home playing with his toy soldiers. The cryptography is cool, but this is not something that is ever going to be able to catch up with Bitcoin. Bitcoin army is a crazy, obsessed, smart bunch of fanatics who've been training together for years and whose numbers far exceed the tiny Kaspa community. And Bitcoin itself is a battle-hardened protocol that has already been attacked by nation states and has only gotten stronger in the process. So if you choose to store your savings in Kaspa or any other asset than Bitcoin, you will gradually get poorer over time relative to Bitcoiners. You can try to trade in and out of Kaspa. You can try to jump from the fastest horse to the next fastest horse. I don't think you can do that successfully over time and on a post-tax basis that will exceed Bitcoin's returns. I'm very, very skeptical that anyone can do this. And I think if you try to do it, you're going to end up very disappointed, like most traders do. If you store your savings in Kaspa over the long term, you will shrink into obscurity. Every single money that has tried to dethrone King Bitcoin has failed. So Kaspa may indeed outperform Bitcoin over certain periods of time. Every shitcoin, even every penny stock, does over certain periods of time. But Kaspa is guaranteed to trend to zero against Bitcoin, like every asset in the world will over time. So choose your money wisely. Money, as we said, is a winner-take-all game, and the winner has been for the last 15 years and will continue to be. That number one spot on CoinMarketCap has always been Bitcoin. No one has ever come close, and groups like Ethereum that have tried have miserably failed. So I would encourage everyone to get on the winning team before it's too late. So if you've ridden it from a penny to 19 or 20 cents or wherever it's trading today, congratulations on that. You really should take your profits and move them into Bitcoin. You've been very lucky. Going forward, you might not be as lucky. It's important just to hodl Bitcoin and don't mess this up because you have shiny new object syndrome. There are always going to be new cryptos that try to claim our attention with promises of supplementing or complementing or displacing Bitcoin. And I would encourage all of you to ignore them and just focus on staying humble and stacking sats. Don't try to outtrade this market. Don't try to trade in and out of other things to get more Bitcoin. Lead a humble and honest life. Provide goods and services to the world for fiat or Bitcoin and use that to buy Bitcoin. Don't try to trade your way to a bigger stack. That will not work for most people, for 99.9% of people. If you enjoyed this video, I encourage you to help to support the channel by becoming a channel subscriber. You can click the join button here at the bottom of this video, or if you're on mobile, you can click the link in the description notes below. And as part of this, you'll get members only videos every month. I'll also put a link in the pinned comment section. You can join at 2 different levels. There's the humble Bitcoin pleb level, $2.99 a month, and you'll get some loyalty badges. You'll get some custom emojis that you can use in comments, including the green Gary Gensler. We have Elizabeth Warren here. We have poor Vitalik Buterin. We have Jerome Powell the clown. If you join at the Toxic Bitcoin Maxi level, $4.99 a month, you'll also get some extra members only videos. I'm about to put out a few in the next couple days as well. You can join this. You can cancel at any time if this is something you're interested in. If you're not interested in joining, I just ask you to support the channel in other ways by clicking that subscribe button, leave a like, leave a comment, question, suggestion for a future video, and let me know what you'd like to see in the next video. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.